Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and Frosty the Snowman here is your other host.
It's Frosty the Snow Person.
Ah,
Thank you very much. so, yeah,
I
so my
was I was confused by the pipe.
well, as many of our viewers know, it's been a snowy time here in Northern Appalachia, and just a little bit ago, some people in my neighborhood and I and my son built a snow bust because we had originally built a several tiered snow man, but the wind came and knocked it over, and all we could salvage was the head and shoulders. And so, yes, it's very chilly, frosty, literally, out there in Northern App. How much snow do you have, Damien?
Oh, more than I want to drive on. So yes, welcome to WANA Live, Cabin Fever edition.
Yeah, exactly. And we're glad to be here though, because we're back after taking a bit of a break, and I still have my tree up because I just love the light. I just can't bear to part with it because it's, so gray and gloomy out, and I've got just a little bit of light here in my office. So
And the snow is piled up so high you can't actually open your back door.
not quite that high, thankfully. But anyways, who do we have on tonight?
All right, so I'm excited about the writer we have on tonight. This is a Pittsburgh writer whose work I've seen around, and I have not gotten a chance to see him read live. So I'm really pleased. We've got Robert Walicki. Tonight, his poems have appeared in more than 50 journals. He's a two-time Pushcart nominee. He's a Best of the Net nominee. His second chapbook, we can ask him about this. The Almost Sound of Snow Falling.
Oh,
very, very timely.
relate.
Was included in the exhibition catalog for the New York Poets House. And his latest full-length collection is Fountain from Main Street Rag Press. And his forthcoming collection will be published by Broadstone Press, and that's going to be called Watershed.
Awesome. All right.
All right, so let's bring him out.
Hey, Larry, Christina, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Nice to be a part of this great series.
Thank you for making time to come on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what will you be reading for us tonight?
I'm going to be reading 3 poems from my new collection, Watershed. And first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to my publisher, Larry Moore from Broadstone. And if you like, I can just get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to disappear and let our audience get what they came for.
Okay, sounds great. So a little context for those of you who aren't all that familiar with my work. I write a lot about my work experiences as a plumber and in the construction trades. And these first 2 poems speak from that life. This is called Litmus. 2 miles away might as well be 30, or only 5 Grateful Dead songs away from New Stanton. 2 years of mandatory overtime at the rehacked Sportsman's Warehouse. A universe of wheat fields, dieseled air, of speeding past the yellow heaven of Larry's drive-through beer emporium. You could lose yourself here in this kingdom of truck stops, of hay piles and microtels, lone highways whispering the history of Mingo, Shawnee, and the sacred mound builders. Before anyone knew how to pray for my grandfather, riverboats shipped whiskey, and his cork factory paycheck, all the way from Stony Creek to Butler Street. Sorry, technical problems. It was a summer my 10-year-old mother braved the smog of lost men to find her father, bring him home. In my dream last night, he was weightless and wearing work boots. leaving town through the air into countries without names. I stayed behind in the morning to look for answers in the 10-inch storm pipe we lay down, the miles of earth we cut open, and the miles of Westmoreland County hills. We thought we figured it out if we laid enough wet tens down, if Butchie but another round at RJ's as Junior staggered in the parking lot, pissing on pickup truck handles. But it was August, and the horizon burned us in effigy for thinking we deserved to outlive the sun, dissolving like a forgotten dream of ryegrass and possibility in this buzzsaw country of trail mud and ATVs. It was the nightfall of crossed lines of checkpoints and cops. It was a summer light lost its identity. Sunlight had forgotten the reason it's walked into a room. That year, we woke all the ghosts we could find in an earthquake of jackhammers, a scream of wet saws entering an earth that didn't want us, but we left offerings. Dream catchers of rain and shoelaces, blood and buried bone, core drills that knocked us off scaffolding, smacked the teeth out of our heads. We wanted there to be evidence of our leaving. Chew cups, an empty rolling rock, stuck open throttle body on the ride home, tranny slipping, tailpipe hitting ground, throwing sparks, picking up speed, waking everyone with its screams. So this next work poem of sorts I'd like to dedicate to the time I spent recently this year with Jennifer Brown at Frostburg University. She promoted this poem as part of my appearance there. So this is called Last Rest Area 60 Miles. When it's over, I mean our work, and ready for burial, for the 11 gravel trucks to come, spill down their mountain of mineral, dismal, igneous, scouring the air. Their fog churning, and the 2-year job disappearing behind me as I turn acres of deer grass scattering into plains, whistle-winded and drifting past dried-out cattle hills and ground streams. The only shine coming from the green of 2 signs, 6 miles from Akron, and last rest area 60 miles. The hill to my left, a reliquary of gravel bed and exile. A mass grave of 18-wheelers, and the Buick rolled into a shipwreck of questions and bent steel. I'm speeding to Lucky's bar through a rainstorm that feels biblical, and the wreck's red blur of flashing. Why do I deserve to live this life? I keep this to myself and buy a Miller for the plumber on my left. Watch the barmaid wipe the bar top with a wet rag as she asks us where we all came from, where we're all going. So I'd like to end this brief reading with a little bit of an upswing and a little joy and love, because we can all use a little joy and love, right? And I'd like to dedicate this last poem to my wonderful wife, Lynn. This is called Pascha, which is from the Latin and Middle English meaning Easter and also Passover. So a little bit of a spring poem for this dreary winter day. Pascha. Almost Easter, which means it's time to wake. For slow 6 a.m. hands cracked like eggs, I mean the ones we hard-boiled last night, peeling shells from their swollen inner bodies. I feel like I'm moving too careful, as if I'm handling a baby, careful not to scratch its skin. I love to hold those clammy globes, then slice them into perfect halves, core out the cold yolks like little frozen suns crumbling. We work together like surgeons whose finesse has finally left them for a whiskey and a few swings off the back nine, the coastline in Puerto Vallarta. Still, it feels too late for everything, for these birds, for the pains in both of our bodies attacking us like little hidden armies, whispering, sit back, you've had a hard week. We don't think we killed anything that could have had wings. Besides, there's so much more in this broken world, in our unfixable bodies. Come here, I want to say. Taste this. Here's a spoonful of mayo, a knife's length of mustard, enough eggs whipped into the shade of spinning suns. You dress those eggs, and I'll squeeze out perfect portions. Somewhere in the bend of your elbow or a pear tree's wind-ripped branches say, we've survived. Tell me about your hunger, and I'll fill it. Fresh scallions, meadow green, ham, honeyed sweet and thick with salt. I'll render the fat, turn the heat up, set the boil rolling, leave it simmering for hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. What I kept hearing was the way to make the profane sacred, the everyday thing becomes extraordinary. And that was really, really well done. And I certainly could identify with the first poem and this idea of, digging into the earth. And I think you said releasing the ghosts, maybe.
Waking the ghosts, yeah.
Well, waking them. And I think it's all just so very, very powerful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had you on to read. There's for a long time there was a lot of criticism of people who are writing poetry, and they're writing for these tiny little audiences, the things that are very esoteric and demand a very comprehensive and sophisticated sense of reference points and allusions and all these things, and people who talk about this, they said, well, if you look at the best-selling books, like books of poetry used to sell well, people would read this stuff because it spoke to them about the lives they were actually living, and I feel like your work just so effectively does that. It's I like what Christina said, making the profane sacred, but it's making wonderful poetry out of lived experience. I love the Larry's drive-through beer emporium and the business, as you said, of work, and having poetry that occupies that space. Just thanks for writing, man. Good stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It took me a long time to find my way into that, because when I first started writing poetry, right, your first instinct, at least my first instinct, well, you got to make it beautiful, right? It's like a beautiful painting. It's poetry. It has to be beautiful. And I saw this interview with Sharon Olds, and something that she said at the very end of it, which was, I want my work to be beautiful, but not too beautiful. And I'm like, wow, what does that mean? Right? And I just wasn't getting it. I wasn't making the connection. And then a mentor in my life was talking with me, and she just said very plainly, write what you know, write who you are. And then it was like floodgates opened up, and the poems were pouring out, and they like felt lived and real, and there was a truth in the speaker, and I just felt driven to write all these poems because it was my life, but it also took me a while to find that dissonant language of the rough sounding words in this kind of, brutal way of work and living, and trying to twist and transform that into poetry that someone might want to read, and not just someone that understands the work. And, I liked your poem because I, was a, operator, or I was an electrician, or I was this or that, but I also, musicality was important for me too. So I wanted language to really be important. So one of my favorite memories after reading everyone had cleared out, and people were coming up to some of the other readers. No one was really coming up to me, but saying, "Oh, that was a great reading," whatever. But I didn't really pay it any mind. There was one guy in the back, and he had this Carhartt jacket on, and he was the husband of one of the readers. He was kind of like looking around, and he was kind of like he was waiting for people to not notice that he was walking up to me. And he says, "Dude, I just want to let you know I'm a heavy equipment operator, and I just really loved your poems." And that meant so much to me, because I felt I made that connection. I think all of us want our poems to have a connection with someone, no matter who they are or from whatever walk of life they come from. If we can make a connection and have our work be impactful for them emotionally and have resonance, then I think that's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think place is very present in your work. You get a real sense of place. And for a lot of us who grew up in Northern Appalachia, people weren't writing about our place, or people that we were assigned in school were not writing about this place. They were writing about New England, or they were writing about California, or they were writing about other places. But I mean, I know I wasn't assigned any local or regional writing until I was in college. And I think there's so more of that now than ever, and that's really exciting. And your work fits very well within, that, like Joseph Bethanti and other poets that have really tried to speak about this place.
Yeah, the bravery of taking on the material. It reminded me a little bit of Timothy Russell. The poet Timothy Russell, writing about the working in the steel mills.
Mm-hmm.
It is a brave thing. It's like I'm going to take this thing that people might not instantly think of as poetic. That is my material, and I'm going to own it and do amazing things with it.
And back to what I was saying, when you know a subject, when you know something so intimately because you've lived it in your skin, and and part of the identity of Pittsburgh is that the blue collar life, and whether it may be physical work, construction work, or working at a grocery store, or working at a restaurant, waiters, waitresses, and on their feet all day. And it's like that, the noble persona of that work is something that I feel is the beating heart of what I want to try to build and foster in my poems.
Right on. Yeah.
So we have a comment actually that relates to that. So Justin says, Appalachia, even the word reminds me of a natural isolation in a sense, very blue collar, but more so rugged, back to nature. It's a regional romanticism in a way.
No, absolutely. There's beauty in, even when you look beyond, like especially in my first poem, when you look beyond all these things that are happening, and the history, the emotional history that has affected the speaker, there's beauty in the hills, there's beauty in the background, and that sort of search for that beauty to sort of kind of help you through those difficult times is something that is, I feel like, another part of what's important for me in the poems. There has to be hope. There has to be a way out. There has to be some kind of lifeline and some kind of beauty, because then what other, what's the reason for, what else is the reason for doing what you're doing, writing poems? There has to be some kind of something that lifts you up, whether it's spiritual, whether it's a romanticism of nature. And so I appreciate that.
A couple more comments. Megan McKinsey gives you some applause. And then we got, I love you, Bob. That's always nice.
Okay, I love you too.
That's always great to have some fans. So, Damien, did you want to add something else?
No, I just want to say thanks, Bob, for coming on. We love your work.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you so much. And next week, Val Neiman will be joining us. I believe she's in North Carolina at the moment. And so we've got a little bit of Southern Appalachia from a Northern Appalachian voice. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for being
Absolutely.
on. And everybody watching, please do pay attention to our page and our emails. We'll be having more information about WANA 2025, our fall conference, coming out to you within the next couple of days. So,
okay. Thanks a lot, everybody.
stay warm, everybody. Night.
Good night.